My name is Susan de Matta. I am a special education teacher. I teach a mild moderate upper grade class in Downey Unified. And so I always like to get started with kind of my reason for being here, my reason for all of this work. And one thing that I absolutely love and admire about our district is that our school vision, our district vision, is not just for some students, it's not for the average student, for gen ed or the 80%. Our vision says that all students will graduate with a 21st century education that ensures they're college and career ready, globally competitive, and citizens of strong character. This is really meaningful because it means that all of us as educators are committed to every single student, making sure that they all have those opportunities to be challenged and the opportunity to be able to excel when they leave us. Right, and that brings it back to our purpose. And I think this is the purpose for all of us here, really is our students. Here I have pictures of what I've lately been referring to as my old job when kids would come into my classroom. It's just been so long in LA County. We have been in distance learning for almost a year now, are coming up. And then mixed in here, I put in the digital versions of my students that we made in a website called Pixton. And again, my purpose is truly just to see those looks of happiness, of students really finding themselves as mathematicians. Because we know that math is typically that time of day when a lot of students struggle. There's like been tears in the past, but with CGI, I feel like a lot of that has gone away. So before we really get into it, I'm just wondering, how has math been feeling for all of you this year? So go ahead and look at our dog scale and choose one that you think fits your feelings best for math this year, and go ahead and type it in the chat. I saw a lot of 3s, definitely some 7s, 4, 2. I feel like 2 is where I live a lot of the time. Like, I don't know, maybe it's working. I love it. Ooh, I see a 6. That's good. I'm glad. Maybe you can share what you figured out. That would be awesome. All right. Thanks for checking in. So yeah, this year has definitely had its ups and downs in this remote teaching world. I know I started with just feeling completely lost. How am I going to teach math online? And then how am I going to really continue to commit to CGI instruction? Because we know that that's a whole other thing. There was definitely a point where I felt like, well, maybe now I just need to switch to direct instruction for a bit. I don't know how to do this. And then, you just kind of collected myself. And then I felt like, no, I can figure this out. I've got this. And then a couple of weeks later, it was just like, no, I'm just kidding. I don't know what I'm doing still. Definitely, right? The ups and downs. And then it's like, no, wait, I have a new idea. Maybe I can do this. And it starts all over again. And I feel like that's part of the big Zoom fatigue and exhaustion of this year. We're constantly, as teachers, just iterating all of our ideas, trying new things. So I really wanted to get first into what were the shifts that I had to make, right? As I'm trying to figure out how am I engaging students in this work? How am I still teaching and committing to CGI? Like what had to change from in class to online? So in Downey Unified, our sort of typical day in person, I had a beautiful 75-minute block where our number talk, our routine at the beginning was 10 to 20 minutes. And this is where it's just kind of a math warm up where students are able to build number sense. It's just reasoning and explaining. It's a lot of speaking and listening. So it's a time for all students. They all have access to something. Sometimes it relates directly to our main lesson. Sometimes it's just shoring up other skills that we need to work on. And then our daily lesson would be the meat of our CGI block, which I call it the problem of the day. And it could be a word problem. It might be accounting collection, error analysis, just whatever your main math task is. And that would take about 30 to 40 minutes. We know we're charting. Sometimes it's a lot of exploration with math concepts. and just making those connections. And we would end it with our 10 to 20 minute share out, which is the most important. This is where the teaching and the learning is really happening. Students sharing out their strategies. We are being really strategic in who we are having share out, right? We're not always just sort of picking random students. We're finding strategies where it's like, oh, this person is definitely on that next step where we want everyone else to start going. So we're being real, and I think also really important is we're celebrating successes, but also struggles. I think whenever we constantly choose students who got the right answer or they figured out how to do it, then we're sort of accidentally telling students that a mathematician is always right. And that's not what a mathematician is. A mathematician is somebody who just tries things and sees what happens. So we also want to choose students that maybe didn't figure it out. They can present on where they got stuck and how can we work together. So that was the beautiful CGI day in person. And then online in our district, we went down to 30-minute sessions. So I had a 30-minute Zoom window to do all of that work I used to do in 75. So in my routine, a big switch, and I was really excited to kind of hear it come out in our keynote this morning, was I realized that my routine needed to be my time to build confidence, safety, and community. Like it was no longer necessarily about shoring up any skills. We're still talking about math, but it had to be a time where every single student had a moment to feel successful. So that every day we're starting math believing that we're mathematicians. Every day we're starting math believing that I can do this work. So I brought it down to 6 to 8 minutes, and we're still continuing all of those reasoning, speaking, and listening skills. Our daily lesson then became 15 to 20 minutes where we unpack the problem, they quickly go into breakout rooms and start working. Sometimes I would have to do it over 2 sessions because 30 minutes is just not enough. So we'd start the problem one day, wrap it up the next. And so the share out would be on day 2, or sometimes if a share out is really important, that would be my whole session. And my async work, I really tried between starting a problem and having them finish it on their own. That didn't really work out for a lot of students. Again, I think math is a time when we feel very vulnerable. I think students need to feel sort of in a secure place, and when they're working on it on their own, they don't always feel that way. And I think that's part of the reason, we don't see a lot of asynchronous work turned in. So I just made my asynchronous work being review, extra practice, just fun math games, just kind of continuing that thinking. So that's what my structure looks like right now. What was able to stay the same between both settings was what the CGI classroom needs to look like. It's still very centered on problem solving. It's a lot of student voice. It's a lot of making sure students feel safe. Instruction is student driven. I'm meeting them where they're at and we're going to where they need to go next. And we're encouraging multiple strategies still. As we know in CGI also, right, it's a big shift in mindset as to when we're looking at students, we shouldn't be looking at them as how can we fix them? Our students don't need fixing. They're whole, perfect, wonderful little human beings, but they definitely do need help to grow. So when we shift to that thinking of how do we grow them instead, it kind of takes away that daunting feeling. And a shift for me in this was more so making sure I focus that on myself in distance learning, is realizing that I don't need to fix that remote teaching is hard and there's a lot of struggles going on with it being at home. It's just what is working and how can I grow those pieces. So now let's kind of get into how did I figure out this problem solving. So the struggle at first was I would pose a great word problem. We acted it out. We discussed it, we imagined it. I did all the beautiful things I would do in the classroom. And then I would get number salad. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Rachel Lambert. She does a lot of work in math and special education, but she calls it number salad when kids just look at the problem, pick a couple numbers, toss them together, and then they figure out some sort of answer. And it doesn't have to relate to the problem. They're just putting them together. And sometimes they'll pepper in an extra number that wasn't even in there. Or they decided they're asking their own question. So this definitely happens in our classrooms, but this continued to happen for a month. with me. And I was trying to figure out what is going on. Like, why are what I usually do to help students visualize, why is that not working? And as we know, for unpacking, just for math in general, visualization is a very key skill. A lot of research shows that students who struggle with visualization are going to struggle with math. It's a really big ask to ask kids to be able to picture an abstract concept like a number. And we do have to do a lot of work to make sure we're explicitly teaching children how to picture these things. So a lot of this is going on, right? We're trying to get them to picture it, but at home, we are really competing with a lot of other things. We're competing for their attention and engagement when we're trying to get them to visualize what's going on in a problem, right? While we're trying to do this work and they're sort of acting it out, they have their video games near them. That's what they're picturing. That's what they want to do. It's so fun. A lot of them have the most adorable little animals running around everywhere. I would definitely rather picture those animals than whatever math problem I have for them. They have the TV running. They have the cutest little babies. I've had so many babies suddenly appear right on the iPad screen and then disappear. They have the cutest baby brothers and sisters. And there's so many things that we're competing for. So how are we selling ourselves to make ourselves more interesting? So we can convince them to buy in by first asking ourselves, what do kids want and what do they need? And Megan and Frankie said it so perfectly this morning, right? When kids want to play, they want to be heard and they want to be seen. Like, we need to start with these questions. We need to figure out, how can we engage them with playing with math? How are we making sure that their needs of being heard and seen are met? So one way that I figured out is that we can engage students online by creating narrative storylines, by really bringing out a story in our math problems instead of just the typical, here it is, let's look at it all together, like really engaging them in imaginative play. And I think not only does brain science tell us that our brains understand things better through story, we also know that it makes it more culturally relevant. A lot of our people of color, right, our communication styles are very story driven, sort of that very like spiral structure as Megan Frankie was talking about this morning. So not only does this make it easier for the brain to understand the math that we're posing, it also makes it very culturally relevant and it creates that safe space. So before I show you some examples of what I mean by that, a lot of the characters I created, I actually used a lot of Snapchat filters. It's super fun to just find weird, wacky pictures, and those were my characters for my stories. I just add a filter, make a weird voice, and record, right, posing my question. So here's the first one. This was my first sort of test how I started. We watched this video that I found on YouTube about tiny hamsters having a tiny barbecue. Somebody made teeny tiny food. They're all sitting around, super adorable. And then the hamsters needed help.
We need someone to bring a little cool to this party. Help me count these sunglasses so I can pass them out.
So immediately they were super engaged. They were just like, why would you go through the trouble of having this hamster talk to me? And so they're fifth graders. So they're really just kind of like, okay, fine, we'll bite. And so then the counting collection started getting done. So this was just posing for counting collections. I used Class Kick. So I was able to also just record my voice. And then I would also have the video in a Google Slide at the time. And so then once I really saw the engagement go up with that, I started getting a little bit more in depth. So then we had our underwater cafe. So we watched this really cool video about this restaurant that's underwater. It looks amazing. So students are already able to visualize this place and they're already sold because it's so different. We looked at pictures. We did a quick, what do you notice? What do you wonder as a mathematician? We looked at the menu. This one I just kind of made up. And then this was how the problem was posed.
Why, hello there. My name is Beatrice.
And of course, all of them
And
had
I'm the
so much
owner of the
fun
restaurant.
kind
I
of
would
watching
love
this
if you could
video,
help us.
all of them accusing, saying, that's obviously you. And I'm just like, well, look at me. That's not what I look like. And so then that's part of that sort of play piece. The kids are so invested. They're trying to explain to me why that has to be me. And I'm just arguing back that it's not. And so it's a lot of fun. So we're just sort of playing that imagination game. And so now they want to get the next phone call. So they're going to ask what she does to see if she calls back so that they could continue to find further evidence that this is me. And then another way that I started posing it, another super fun way, is you just start with the what do you notice, what do you wonder? And then of course, eventually one student notices that there's that little speech bubble in the back and they're still asking about it. And again, you're doing that whole play thing. What are you talking about? I don't see it. Oh, okay, let's get closer. There it is. There's something calling to us. And so then again, they're super engaged. All of a sudden, everything else going on at home isn't as interesting as why is something calling to me on this slide. And again, this was another Snapchat filter I found. It was a pumpkin. The pumpkin.
I am so excited you made it. You made it all the way over here. You saw me. You saw me. You heard.
So that was a lot of fun. And so then they're accusing me of being the pumpkin. And I'm just like, I can't believe you just said my head looks like a pumpkin. I'm so sad. How would you say that to your teacher? And so at this point in the year, this was towards the end of October, we want them to start doing all this visualization work on their own. We don't want them to depend on all of our stories and our pictures and videos. So then they're seeing the problem, but it's numberless. So they have to start sort of imagining, well, what would I do? What kind of numbers would be here? And so then that's how we're reinforcing those skills as well. And so bringing it back to the feeling seen and heard, how can we use the same idea of creating these really neat stories to make students feel seen? So one of my students and my whole class knows she is absolutely obsessed with TikTok. She is a TikToker. She tells us all the time. She is a celebrity. Every single day, she's updating us on how many likes she's got, how many subscribers she has going. So when they saw this, they immediately knew she made this problem for her. I didn't even have to say it. They just knew. And she was so excited. And she's one of my students who feels like math is so difficult, but she was super engaged. Again, just another little, I found just like a random workout Snapchat filter.
Hey, viewers, made it to my video.
And it's so fun and it's hilarious. And so then again, she felt super seen. And so once the kids saw that I would do something for them, then I started getting requests. So I had about 3 kids requesting, well, why can't we do something about Pokemon? I play Pokemon. So then I created another problem with a character who was going to go into a Pokemon battle. I made it seem like we were getting a phone call. We had our video. And again, opposing these numberless problems before I release them to solve problems with numbers that I've given them. So they do get number choices. And this is another way to create that sort of safe space as well. If the students first see it numberless and they're not seeing that some kids are getting one set of numbers and another group is getting a different set. Because everybody wants to feel successful. And sometimes when they start noticing there's groups of different numbers, they start trying to figure out, well, who is better? And that's not what we're looking for. And so then again, to continue to make them feel seen, I added his picture in there. So for our new challenger, our next problem was going to involve one of our students. And when our students saw him pop up, all of them started yelling. All of them were like, oh my gosh, that's Adonis. How did this happen? And again, they felt really seen and special. And it was really great for me to start getting requests for math, because that means they're thinking about it all day. They're trying to connect it also to their worlds, because some of them would stop and think, well, what would make sense to do in math? And that's exactly what we want. We want our kids to start seeing the world and seeing math everywhere. And another super simple way to make them feel seen is I started pasting their Pixton character. So Pixton is a free website. It does have some paid features, but they can create their avatar and you get a really cute class picture out of it as well. And so I would put it on there and more students started wanting to share out as long as they could see their avatar on there. So they just thought it was the most amazing thing. Going back to it's so simple that kids literally just want to be seen. They built their character, they personalized it, they want to see themselves on there. So more kids started wanting to make sure they got their work done so that they would have the opportunity to share out. And then offering choices. Another way just to kind of get them re-engaged is it started as a choose your own adventure story. We were on this pirate ship and they got to choose whether they were going to check on the arguing or it wasn't their problem. Of course, they all chose it's not my problem. So we went this way, but then the bird stopped them and they've got to go back and check on it. And so then, but then they still sort of have a choice. They can be like, ugh, fine, or you're right. Yes, I'm going to go. So of course, my fifth graders chose, ugh, fine. And then they come upon the argument and then they all want the most from this pirate treasure. We were starting some fair share problems at this time. And so again, this is naturally creating, we're telling the story, they're picturing it, they're visualizing it. They're using all of these skills. And so then they're being really successful when they go back to their problem because they've already had an experience with it, right? They've really engaged in that visualization. And then sometimes it's really great to take advantage of their empathy and ego because they love nothing better than feeling like we need them, that they know everything. So I would pose a problem and sometimes I'm the character. There's always something wrong going on in my life and I can't figure it out. So they really enjoy the drama. I use my sister a lot. In my stories, my sister is always trying to one-up me. I use a lot of cooking references. Every single class I've ever had, my poor students leave thinking that poor woman just cannot feed herself. She cannot do a thing. At least once a year, my students will be like, how are you a teacher? You need so much help all the time. And I'm just like, I don't know. That's why I have you guys. So we were just comparing fractions, comparing decimals, trying to figure out why my cookies went wrong. And kids are so sweet and so empathetic. They really want to help us. So we engage that emotional piece with them as well, which I think that alone helps so much if they're emotionally engaged. So, oh, it looks like I'm finishing kind of early. So that's been my journey with engaging students with this work. So I really started the year needing these bigger, more in-depth storylines. And I've slowly decreased them over time. So there's less and less videos. Maybe there'll be one at the beginning of a unit. Because again, we're trying to go ahead and go back and put that back on our students. We want them to be the ones visualizing. We need to remember that whenever we're adding pictures and helping them unpack, that's a scaffold that we're providing. And scaffolds do need to be phased out because we want them to be able to do this work on their own. So these are the apps that I use regularly. I use ClassKick for whenever they're working individually on a problem. ClassKick is amazing. There's a free version. There's also a paid version. You can watch the students work in real time. If you haven't tried it, definitely this is a great one. And it's great too for explanations for you to understand what they're doing because it allows them to record their voice. So students who are hesitant to type out their explanations can record their voice also. Jamboard, I love. It's so versatile and I love to use it for teamwork. Anytime students are working together, I assign Jamboards for them because it's very collaborative. Sometimes our whole class is on one Jamboard on different slides, basically, or sometimes each team has their own that they're working on. Google Slides I use, that's how I assign my asynchronous work. And that's what I use to just present my problems every day in instruction. Pixton is the website where they can make their virtual avatars. That one is really fun. Students really enjoy it. Sometimes they're allowed to go into Pixton and create comics and pose their own problems that way. So again, we're giving them ownership. They're feeling seen and heard. It's a super fun website. And the Math Learning Center has amazing virtual manipulatives. I'll usually link those into our ClassKick problems, and they're able to choose which ones they're going to use. All right, so I've done a lot of talking. So I did make a Jamboard. And I wanted us to just sort of take a moment to reflect on everything that we've heard today. And I want you to reflect on, first, there's going to be a board where you can just add a post-it with your thoughts. What is important to your students? To really start engaging our kids, you really need to take time to think about what is important to them. You know, and this helps us whenever we're creating problems that are authentic to them as well. Like that TikTok problem, I had to stop and think, it's not just an interest to her, it's something that's so important, it's her passion. So that's going to really engage them. So think about what is important to your students. And then on the next board, you can add, what are their interests? Just start thinking. And then if we can all see each other's too, I think this helps us stop and think about our kids as well. And then if you could leave, what are your takeaways from today? And if you've thought of any brilliant storyline ideas while you're sitting here today, or if you have any other ideas you'd like to share, as we know, we all grow better together, you could leave that in there too. So the link is in the chat. If you haven't used Jamboard before, it would look like this. The post-it is this one right here. And it just lets you type in there. Oh, yes, Among Us, definitely. A teacher I know, she's been doing, there's a routine called 3 of these things, where you put up 4 things and the kids to figure out what's common between them and math concepts. And then, but it's Among Us themed. So you have to figure out which one is suspect. And so students have a lot of fun figuring it out that way. Error analysis is really great too, if you theme it with Among Us, trying to figure out, you know, which one is what doesn't belong, what kind of is being sabotaged in there. Anime, Roblox. GIFs, yes, I see somebody put they love when I use GIFs in a problem. They do. GIFs make such a huge difference. And even just memes, right? That's how we communicate so often. Kids communicate with memes as well. Sushi and boba. That sounds good. Give it a couple more minutes to add to the Jamboard. Right, and then I just wanted to kind of end my piece of me talking with reminding you that young mathematicians want to play, to be heard, and to feel safe. And as long as we are keeping these things in mind, I think we can definitely create ways for our kids to really engage with the CGI work. So I will stop my share. Got it. Thank you, Kelly. If you can't get into the Jamboard right now, it'll be there. You can probably get in later as well. I just wanted to open it up, I guess, a few minutes early for Q&A. If anybody had any questions.
I have one. How long did it take me to get started, like making the videos and everything like that?
Like at the very beginning, I think when I was keeping it really simple and it was just a video without trying to do the backgrounds or anything,
Right.
It didn't take that long. Sometimes it would just take long because I would like redo the video because I'm like, I looked weird or I sounded weird. Or what other voice can I do? But it's really easy. You just download it and then I would put it into my Google Drive and it was good to go.
I could see myself doing that. And I'm redoing a lot of videos, but it would be worth it for sure.
It's so fun. How many days a week? It's CGI is just life. So every day is CGI. Whenever I do math, I'm definitely using it from that CGI framework. Thanks, Marina. So it's just like that daily piece of we're constantly just trying to center student thinking, pushing that problem solving. I usually do vary between maybe 1 week it'll be word problems, and then I'll try to connect it to accounting collection throw, and that's kind of my cycle of what changes is the type of problem, but it's always that CGI approach. So what's really great, thank you for your question, Stephanie. So the student work is all in ClassKick. So you assign it and you can easily see everyone's on there. I can show you what it looks like, and the Jamboard as well. I also take anecdotal notes every single day. So I have just this really simple sheet that I printed out. It has their names on it, and then just my observations and next steps. And so during class, I can usually meet with or just go listen in on 1 or 2 breakout rooms. And I'll kind of really focus in on 3 or 4 kids during a Zoom session. And then I'm able to go back afterwards in ClassKick. So I make sure that they all have their work in their ClassKick or Jamboard. I have not used Pear Deck.
I had a quick question about how you the phone instead of instead of just making the Snapchat, is there an app for that? Like
for the phone, I'll usually just kind of look up a I'll Google like iPhone icon PNG.
Okay.
And then it'll come up. So it's just like a super simple icon
Okay,
is what I use. There's also a website called Ditch That Textbook, and they have a lot of really cool like Google slides made with really neat sort of backgrounds. That's where I got sort of the TikTok layout too. I can type that one in the chat. Ditch That Textbook is really cool.
Thank you.
Let me see. How do I see their work? Their work is in, so I only use ClassKick and Jamboard for their work. Even if the students prefer writing paper pencil, I do expect them to take a picture of it and put it in. So I just don't let them leave the Zoom unless they have their picture in there. That is the only way so I can make sure I see it. For my students who do struggle with being able to do that, I'll just have them hold it up and I'll screenshot it and put it in for them. That way I have it all in one place. Let's see. I have had students create their own word problems. One of them did a video one, but for some reason, my kids this year are super shy. So they just prefer sort of creating their own slide. But yeah, they were super fun. And those are really good too to use for homework. Again, it'll really encourage them for that asynchronous piece. It'll really encourage them to go back and want to do it if their friends are the ones posing those problems. And sometimes I will, if a student really wants to create a word problem for the class, then I'll meet with them separately and we'll sort of work on it together just to make sure that it still sort of fits in a way that all students will have access. Let's see, do I assign homework? Yes, so sometimes, so for example, right now we're in our fraction unit. So my homework is just equal share problems. So I'll just pose an equal share problem. I'll also add in a what do you notice, what do you wonder picture for math. And I try to keep it simple that way, because if we're doing the same work from in class, I feel like they still need that support from me. And equal share continues to still be a really great way for them to practice those fraction skills. So that's just kind of what I do for homework. I'll pose a word problem or I keep to like a what do you notice, what do you wonder picture, just so that they're still talking about math. Sometimes too, I've tried having them go around their home and take pictures of things that we could use for our what do you notice, what do you wonder routine. All right, is ClassKick like Nearpod? I think ClassKick is just a little bit different. I can show you, I'll share screen. I've seen a couple questions about what it looks like. Okay, so in our district, we paid for the pro account, which basically just means that the students get to continue to see all of their work. I think that's the biggest difference. So our latest problem was the grocery problem. We're doing multiple groups for fractions. So what I usually do to create my problems in ClassKick is I'll make them in a Google slide, download the slides as images, and that's what I'll upload. Although sometimes ClassKick is kind of laggy. But again, it's great because it has all of their work there. And so I differentiate by having, I assign different numbers sets to different students. So you can create your different rosters and then you see their work in there. And if they're working on it in real time, you can see what they're doing and you can kind of, if you're on Zoom, they can hear you and you can kind of prompt them that way. So this is what ClassKick looks like. So it's nice because then you have all of their work in one spot and you can go back to it later easily to kind of check in and see, okay, this student definitely needs more support next time. So it lets you kind of take notes on who you're going to make sure you meet with the next day. So a typical error analysis lesson. Sometimes we will, so I'll say like, oh, a student in so-and-so's class is saying that the answer to this problem is 5, but somebody else is arguing that that's not it. So then we'll be able to look at their work for both of them. And then students are supposed to try to figure out kind of who would be right. So that's kind of where we're looking at error analysis that way. Or sometimes it'll be, I'll present some work and sometimes it'll be me that made it, just kind of me making a couple little misconceptions in there. And then this person thinks this is the answer, but so-and-so, when they looked at it, they said they disagreed. Why do you think they might have disagreed? So that's kind of where I go with error analysis. Do they sign in with Google? In ClassKick, yes. They sign in with their, we have our school Google account. So you can import your roster from Google Classroom into ClassKick, and then it just lets them sign in that way. Yes, so at the beginning of the year, I stayed away from ClassKick. I was sticking with Jamboard because of all their lag issues, but I feel like lately they've really fixed up a lot of that. So it really has not been a problem for me in the past 2 months, which has been great. Really great questions. Let's see. Any other questions? I make up a lot of them. I do. So for example, for fractions, I'm like looking around like I'm in my classroom and my book is right next to me. There's this amazing book. Actually, I think I do. It's my fraction Bible. It's called Extending Children's Mathematics, Fractions and Decimals. And it's definitely very CGI. That book is amazing. That one is where I pull all of my fraction word problems and it really helps me understand where to go. For all my other ones, Usually it's just me off the top of my head, or meeting with my PLCs, trying to see what they're doing too. And again, that's how we all just grow together. Just asking everybody, what did you do? Oh, perfect. Thank you, Amy. But yes, that book is my Bible for when I'm teaching fractions. It's amazing. Any other questions? All right. I'm seeing, right? And I was really excited this morning when Megan Frankie basically said the whole to be heard and seen. I was like, hey, me too. That was awesome. Thank you, Carolyn. All right, well, that is all I had. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your questions. If you have any other questions, feel free to stay and ask. If I can help you in any way, I'm so glad. Thanks.